You are live.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you all for joining today for what I am sure will be a great roundtable event. I would like to thank everyone who helped put this together. I think we're going to have a good time today. My name is Scott Santamaria, and I am the Director of Intergovernmental and External Affairs Office for the Department of Energy. Our responsibility here at IGEA is to be pretty much the front door to the Department of Energy. For example, if you are looking for a person you would like to talk to, or one of the 17 program offices that we run here at Department of Energy, we can make that happen here. So please feel free at any time to reach out to our office here at DOE. At this time, I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Stuart Henderson, who has served as Director of Jefferson Lab since April 2017. Dr. Henderson earned his BS in chemistry from Vanderbilt University and a PhD in physics from Yale, and is an internationally recognized expert in particle accelerators. Prior to joining Jefferson Lab, Dr. Henderson served as the director of the Advanced Photon Source Upgrade Project, where he led the effort to design and build a fourth-generation synchrotron light source that will produce the world's brightest hard X-rays. Previously, Dr. Henderson served as Associate Laboratory Director for accelerators at Fermilab and managed the lab's accelerated research, development, construction, and operations activities. He also spent nearly a decade at Oak Ridge National Laboratory's Spallation Neutron Source, where he played key roles in constructing and commissioning the world's most powerful accelerator-based neutron science user facility. Thank you, Dr. Henderson, and take it away.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I am Stuart Henderson, the director of the Thomas Jefferson National Accelerator Facility, better known around here as either Jefferson Lab or J-Lab, and I really want to thank you all for joining us this afternoon, and welcome to this event entitled A Conversation with Dr. Chris Fall on Science in the Community. I'm joined virtually by Dr. Chris Fall, who is the director of the U.S. Department of Energy's Office of Science. That's the part of the DOE that funds and oversees Jefferson Lab. Dr. Fall is in fact a native of Virginia, growing up in Tidewater as part of a military family. Dr. Fall is a neuroscientist by training. He received his PhD in neuroscience and his bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, both from the University of Virginia. He was on the faculty of the University of Illinois in Chicago, was the chief scientist at the Office of Naval Research, has served in the White House Office of Science, Technology, and Policy, and for the past year and a half, he's been the director of the Office of Science, heading up the nation's largest basic science organization with responsibility for 10 national labs, including Jefferson Lab. I'm really happy that Dr. Fall was so enthusiastic about this event and organizing this town hall based on his interest in reaching out to the region and communities that host each of our nation's national labs, recognizing the critical part that these communities play in the success of all the labs. Before handing this off to Dr. Fall, I do want to say a few words about Jefferson Lab and its future from my perspective. And we get into this a little bit further, I'm sure, in the questions that follow. So Jefferson Lab is one of 10 Office of Science labs and one of 17 DOE labs located across the country. Jefferson Lab is the newest of the labs, built in the late 1980s and early 1990s with a single-minded focus on nuclear physics. It was founded with a mission of scientific exploration of the smallest building blocks of all the matter that makes up the universe. That is the protons, neutrons, and nuclei of atoms, and in particular, the quarks and gluons from which they themselves are built. We built, operate, and recently upgraded the world's most powerful electron microscope for peering inside protons, neutrons, and nuclei to unravel the mysterious subatomic world that lies inside of all matter and to understand the strongest known force in the universe, the mysterious force that holds quarks together to make up protons, neutrons, and nuclei. Because our facility is truly unique in the world, we're the scientific home to a very large team of nuclear physicists from all around the world, numbering nearly 1,700 at last count, who carry out their research at Jefferson Lab. In addition to the basic scientific knowledge of the world around us, we produce two other very important products, if you will. The first of those are nuclear physicists. About 1/3 of the nation's nuclear physics PhDs come out of Jefferson Lab research every year. These are scientists who go on to careers in a truly amazing array of disciplines, from basic scientific research to nuclear medicine to cancer research, nuclear security and safety, high performance computing, and of course teaching. At Jefferson Lab, we also produce very specialized technologies, yielding a very significant inventory over the years of patents and intellectual property. These tools and technologies that we develop to help us explore the nucleus often have applications that are useful well beyond our immediate research needs. Jefferson Lab technologies have been put to use to identify and diagnose cancers, create new advanced materials, and are being explored right now for the potential of cleaning up wastewater. Our vision for the future of Jefferson Lab is to continue our role in the scientific discovery at the most fundamental and basic level, and to expand efforts to benefit society via those discoveries. We will do that by both focusing on CBAF's core mission of nuclear physics discovery, as well as through our significant role on the Electron Ion Collider project in partnership with Brookhaven National Laboratory. As the next major nuclear physics facility constructed in the U.S., the EIC will advance our understanding of the origins of visible matter at the most basic and fundamental level, including images, pictures, if you will, of the interior of protons and neutrons. We are also excited about possibilities to broaden the lab's scientific mission and impact by exploring other fields of science, in particular through high-performance computing. We're already making strides in artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data sciences to increase our impact even further. These fields are very important for Virginia, given the Commonwealth's investment in tech talent and the emphasis of many of our institutions of higher education in the areas of data sciences, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, high-performance computing, and cybersecurity. Finally, we're expanding ways that our innovation can spur economic development and other benefits to our region and society. Our partnership with the Tech Center right next door, our collaboration with the Virginia universities, coupled with the excellent support from the Commonwealth and the City of Newport News, really give us confidence that working together, we continue to make a real difference on the peninsula, a real difference in Hampton Roads, and a real difference in the Commonwealth of Virginia. With that, I'm very happy to turn it over now to Dr. Chris Fall. Chris?
Are we good? It's yet another video platform. Every time I change one, I'm not sure it's working. Hey, thanks for hosting me. It's a real pleasure to be with all of you today. It looks from the roster that I got that we have a pretty interesting group with a varied background. Based on the response we had, it was a great response. It's safe to say that I think Virginia is for lovers of science and technology. And we're thrilled to have so many advocates for Jefferson Lab here, right? We appreciate you taking the time to join the town hall. At the risk of leaving folks out, which I'm sure I'm going to do, and of course this is based on RSVPs because I can't see everyone, so it's hard to know the ground truth. But I do want to take a moment to mention a few folks specifically from the federal, state, and local governments who are with us. First of all, I want to thank Congressman Bobby Scott and his staff for being with us today, and I think he's going to say a few words in just a minute. We have staff representing the offices of Senators Warner and Kane, Representatives Luria, Whitman, and Morgan. Both Virginia and JLab are really fortunate to have the support of these dedicated folks. I've worked with them and their staffs. I know how much they care. I believe we have Senator Mason, as well as Delegates Simons and Mullen, Deputy Secretary of Education Bradford, and folks from the Office of Planning and Budget participating from the Commonwealth. And then we have, I believe, Mayor Price and members of the Newport News City Council with us as well. So this is a great group. And the bottom line is we've got folks with us who are used to looking at the big picture and who are capable and do make decisions on behalf of Hampton Roads, right? Affecting you all and affecting us in our laboratory. So I wish I could be there in person and get to know you a bit. And I think once we're over this in a better place with COVID, hopefully soon, I'll be grateful for the opportunity to get down and visit you all in person if you'll have me. And so finally, I'd like to recognize Tim Hallman, who's on my team and runs the nuclear physics program that provides the majority of the support for JLab and really takes a lot of care to nurture the laboratory. So why are we doing this town hall? The big picture is that we're trying to understand better what you think it means to have a national laboratory in your community. What's important to you? We want to know what it means for our lab to be a good neighbor. We want to know what it means for our lab to be a meaningful employer. But we want to know what it means for our lab to be part of the vision for the city and the region. We like to think of our labs as sort of anchor tenants in the economic development trajectory in the area around the lab. And these town halls that we're doing, this is the third that we've done. They're a bit of an experiment for us, right? We're actually pretty new to this sort of community and stakeholder engagement. We spent, for perspective, we spent, the first 50 years or so of our existence as a department from the Manhattan Project through the Cold War, really trying not to tell anyone what we did at all. So it's not in our DNA really to reach out and ask how we doing, how can we fit in better, how can we help grow the community in the region. But we do this amazing science and this amazing technical work that I think most people don't appreciate, not just in nuclear physics like at JLab, but amazing work across many of the frontiers of science. And that's exciting to scientists like myself because we're discovering new things. As Stuart said, nuclear physics is about the fundamental building blocks of matter. That excites a lot of folks. But it's also exciting because some of these discoveries can be made useful. They can be made into products. They can be made into companies. They can be made into jobs. They can help us chart the future of our kids. And without abdicating the basic science mission in nuclear physics for JLab, basic science more generally for the department, that's going to remain our primary focus. We want JLab and all our labs to spend a little less time looking inward and more time figuring out how to be relevant, not just to science, but to society. We can do great science and also be great at training students, and not just as scientists, but as technicians and tradespeople. We can do great science and also be great at transitioning that science to the private sector to build industries of the future, say. And, that's why the tech center is so important to us, for example. We can be an organizing center for all sorts of technical talent, companies, academics, political leaders, and so forth to come together and chart a vision for the technology future of Hampton Roads, right? And still do great discovery science. So, bottom line, we're thinking differently about our labs at the Department of Energy. And I'd like to understand, and I'm sure Stuart would like to understand, how we can best fit into and contribute to the future of the region. And in order to do that, it's important to have conversations like this and to be coordinated about our plans for the future. So that's why we're with you today. We're, hopefully, and I think this, again, the roster proves a great group of folks representing the internal and external stakeholders for JLab. And it's that simple and that complicated, and I hope it makes sense. So I know we're going to take some questions and dig into some of this in more detail. But before we do that, I would like to thank specifically James Aiken and Scott, who you heard from on my staff, and Deborah Dowd and the rest of the team at JLab for making all this happen. A lot of logistics, a lot of planning went into this, so we really appreciate that. And again, I believe that Congressman Scott would like to take the opportunity to say a few words. So why don't I hand it over to him?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Falls, and welcome. Wait a minute. Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Falls, and I look forward to the discussion. I want to welcome you to the peninsula, albeit virtual. As you may know, JLab has been an essential part of the Virginia Peninsula since it started when I was in the state Senate of Virginia in the mid 80s, and it's been a very important part of the Virginia Peninsula ever since. It's been an important part for education, K through 12, encouraging young people to get involved in the STEM areas, and for higher education, making sure that the college students all over Virginia had the opportunity to take advantage of JLab, and that's all of the colleges, not just the ones in the area. University of Virginia, Dr. Fall is very much involved. The students certainly benefit from it by being encouraged to get into STEM areas. Excuse me. In the STEM areas. And so I just want to thank you for being with us today, and I look forward to the discussion, particularly in how JLab can expand its mission and get into other areas. So Dr. Paul, thank you so much for being with us. I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Congressman. And I know we have a couple questions that Dr. Fall and Dr. Henderson are going to answer. I just want to say we had over 100 questions submitted. Couldn't take all of them, but that shows the level of engagement from the community here. And so we tried to sort of pick the ones that best encapsulated what people wanted to hear about. So the first question comes from Newport News Councilwoman Patricia Woodbury. And her question was, have you been involved with any research on the coronavirus and its effects on communities?
Well, thanks for the question, Madam Councilwoman. And by the way, we'll be back, right? This is the first engagement. We're serious about this idea of trying to understand better, and that takes repeated engagement. I'm not, I just want to make sure that you guys can hear me because I just got a blank screen pop up. So are we still good?
Pretty good.
Yep,
Okay.
we hear you.
Okay. All right. Well, good. Technology. All right. So, hey, COVID. So COVID is something obviously that's still with us and on everyone's mind. It's affected the DOE and our laboratories, just as it's affected, Hampton Roads, your community, your workplace, your families, most importantly. Obviously, we'd be doing this meeting in person if it were not for COVID. And I want to tell you, really, that the whole DOE laboratory complex, yes, has been deeply involved in the response to COVID. And in fact, and I'm not going to do it because it's not the focus of today's discussion, but I could spend all day talking about the different ways that DOE and our labs have been involved in the fight, from our supercomputers, the X-ray light sources that Stuart used to design, and we're upgrading, for example, to our biotech facilities. We've been an integral part of understanding the virus and helping to develop countermeasures. And important, since Congressman Scott's and representatives from the Senate are on the line, hats off to the Congress that recognize these world unique capabilities that the department has and authorized and funded us to make these tools available for COVID. We couldn't have done it without the authorization and the funding. So, we've already committed every dollar that they appropriated to us for COVID. We're working as fast as we can on the science. I'm not allowed to ask them for more money, but nothing in the DC rule book prevents me from telling them that we've spent all the money that they already gave us on COVID. So a wink is as good as a nod to a blind horse there. And seriously, though, despite what you hear about all the wackiness in DC Congress, the staff members have been incredible working with us about our needs, the impacts to the complex, our ability to help. I don't want to digress there. To answer your specific question, though, one of the particularly special capabilities we have in our complex is computational epidemiology, aided by those supercomputers that I mentioned. And so we have epidemiology teams at a couple of our labs, not just studying COVID transmission from an academic sort of theoretical perspective, but these folks are actually plugged into FEMA and Health and Human Services, CDC, et cetera, doing work operationally, sort of answering questions in real time for these folks making decisions. So it's been incredibly rewarding to have the labs and the scientists not just engaged, but kind of beating down our door with ideas on how they can help. You all can be proud about what they're doing for the country. I know I'm proud about what they've been doing. So thanks for that question. It's been great.
Thanks, Chris. The next question comes from Joseph Preble, who is a senior team leader at Jefferson Lab. Joseph, go ahead.
Sure thing. Thank you very much. So the national labs are a high-value asset for the Department of Energy and the nation. I think, as you were just talking about, projects though are large enough that really multi-lab collaborations are required to complete these projects by engaging all the required resources from the various labs. So one lab just can't do these big projects. So with that, and that's kind of changing as things are getting larger and larger. So is there a plan to look at how to best utilize the core competencies at these labs? And as a means to strengthen these core competencies, is there a plan to strengthen these core competencies and reduce the unnecessary spending and duplication of facilities and staffing?
There's a lot in the question. Thanks, thanks, Joseph. Okay, hey, it's a great question. It's dear to my heart. So the short answer is yes. Hey, you're right. With your analysis, the complex has evolved in the past couple decades to a model where, because of the size, the complexity, and some other things, the labs really collaborate as a team on these major facilities infrastructure projects. Spallation neutron source at Oak Ridge, I think, was the first big example of bringing together the lab to build something. Before that, it was sort of done on an individual lab basis. The LINAC coherent light source upgrade that's now happening at Stanford's another great example. And of course, maybe this is where you're going with the question. I think you all know and expect that the electron-ion collider, the EIC, is going to be built in the same way. And I do think it's important for everyone to realize that these collaborations are not just about the thought work that goes into these projects, because at the end of the day, for some of the components that go into these facilities, there's no industrial supply chain, right? And so the complex, individual labs like JLab actually manufacture a lot of the parts and equipment for these projects. And yeah, there's a plan to do, hopefully, plan to do all this better. So I'm actually a little bit less worried about duplication in facilities and staffing. I think there's plenty of work to go around now in the future. It's a relatively small community. I am worried about, broadly speaking, continuity. One example of continuity is having an enduring resource for, say, engineering best practices, lessons learned, kind of a chief engineer function that can advise. So we don't have to start from scratch every time we build one of these big projects. But I'm especially worried about building and promoting and nurturing that supply chain that I talked about. So, the only reason we build these parts ourselves in our labs is that no one else is willing to do it. And so if we can coordinate, if we look across long term about the projects, and there are a number of these things underway or being planned, if we can coordinate demand for things like the components of cryomodules that you know about, or special magnets, or the other things that we need in a way that ensures more steady work over time, we think that we can attract suppliers from the commercial sector to invest in production capacity and expertise. So I don't want to spend too much time on all the details, because we're actually building the plane as we're flying it, sort of in the early stages of working it all out. But that's exactly why in the Office of Science, I've actually stood up a new office of accelerator and laser R&D and production. But I do want to make sure it's clear that this is really meant to be a coordinating and a consulting function. We don't envision getting in the business in the Office of Science of managing and running major projects. That's not our wheelhouse. That's not our expertise. We're going to continue as we have, assigning these projects to laboratories for management and execution. But, you know, we're talking about continuity, talking about the big picture. Another big component of this is assuring a healthy pipeline of people who know how to design and build these major scientific projects. You don't just wake up one day knowing how to build an accelerator and being ready to lead one of these things. And so we think a principal path of education, project experience, bolstered by, you know, support if we need to support that education in certain places will result in more of these really phenomenal people being a part of the DOE enterprise. So that's a great question, and yeah, we're all over this. Stuart, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Just to really emphasize that, yeah, more and more, you know, I would say even over my, you know, career span in the DOE, I've really seen in the labs, rather, I've really seen this dynamic shift in a big way from every lab kind of on their own to the labs really coming together and working together, you know, on these big projects, you know, as a great example, like Chris said, starting really in a serious way with the Oak Ridge project. But more and more, you know, almost all of these big accelerator projects, the sort of things we're involved with at Jefferson Lab, you know, are accomplished in this way. And, you know, I should also point out, you know, for everyone out there listening, that Jefferson Lab is one of the more active labs in just what we're talking about, partnering in accelerator technology for, you know, these big state-of-the-art accelerator-based research facilities that really kind of make up, you know, what I'd like to think of as sort of the heart and soul of the Office of Science user facilities. So we're front and center on that topic.
Great. Thank you, Stuart. The next question is from Savannah Bolin, who is the Regional Director of Gather. Go ahead.
Hi, guys. I am from Newport News, born and raised, and now I'm in a business that's at Tech Center, as you guys know, and other locations. And I just wanted to see your thoughts on, you know, with COVID and just pre-COVID, what are things that you expect to happen in the tech industry, and then how can we as a community and as business leaders help support what you're doing and the efforts of Tech Center?
Wow. Well, I hope, you know, hopefully COVID is just sort of a blip in the road there, and we're not, yeah, it's not to say, and this is a very real topic probably for another day, that we're not going to emerge from this in a very different place regarding the future of work. But in terms of, you know, bringing more tech into Tech Center or into the area, that's a hard one. I think you appreciate, if you're working in the area and you're part of Tech Center, there aren't easy answers that are going to make this sort of thing happen overnight. Because I think, and this is my opinion, you know, that it's not just about putting up buildings, you know, investments in facilities, buildings, whatever. It has a lot to do with culture and identity, and frankly, it's got to be bigger than just about you know, Newport News. It's got to be you got to take a regional perspective. You know, there's another region in another beautiful part of the country on a bay with a busy port, a number of great universities, a NASA engineering center, medical schools, national laboratory presence. You know, what is that? Of course, I'm talking about the Bay Area in California, and they, you know, they have an awfully big head start on tech as an identity, and are significant, dominant players in all sorts of areas. But you know, Silicon Valley started with silicon. Silicon Valley started with a focus on microelectronics, and out of that grew a startup culture, and a concentration of venture capital, and now it's software, particularly the internet, apps, biotech, advanced energy, all sorts of stuff. It's a self-generating sort of innovation machine. Now, Hampton Roads, or Tidewater, as we used to call it when I was growing up, there has some advantage. It's also beautiful. One real advantage is people can actually afford to live in Hampton Roads, and I don't think they can increasingly in the Bay Area of California. You've got a huge advantage, right? Not only do you have the economic benefit from the concentration of military, this tax base that allows for good roads and schools and infrastructure and amenities. But the military itself is an occupation that's technology-based. So you have these great kids coming out of the military who understand technology, have a great work ethic, and are looking for opportunities to get on with their lives. You've got some, intrinsic advantages you can capitalize on. But I'm not sure in my heart of hearts that high tech is part of the identity that most people associate with Hampton Roads, right? And high tech is a lot about culture and identity and critical mass, a place where techies can be with other techies, and a place where techies are the heroes and thought leaders and the influencers, a place where investment money will follow those folks, enable them to start and grow companies, a place where all these kinds of folks can see a future and where they want to be. So you're making great investments. Tech Center is one of them. But I also think you need to be working on how to complete a sentence that goes something like this. Hampton Roads is the place to be in the country if you want to do X in technology, right? And the Commonwealth has to get behind that with messaging and resources, and ODU and Norfolk State and Hampton University, William & Mary, CNU, the other regional universities have to get behind that by bringing in the best folks in the country for X. And the high schools need to start, be talking about X, and JLab can get behind X, particularly if it's related to nuclear physics, but we can, there are some other opportunities. And once you have X as a basis, then you start to diversify to sort of Y and Z. I can't tell you what X and Y and Z are for Hampton Roads, but I can tell you we have a pretty good idea about the next generation of industries of the future. AI, machine learning, a huge one. Quantum information sciences, a huge one. The bioeconomy, biotechnology, biosecurity, next generation biology, advanced energy. I think, in your wheelhouse, there's some promise in technology related to the oceans. But my opinion is you got to make a bet, right? If you're starting out, you need to grab onto one of these things, the industries of the future, or whatever other technology it is that best resonates with the region, and dare to try to be great with focused investment and attention, because you're in competition with a lot of regions that already have an identity around technology. What is it that differentiates Hampton Roads from San Francisco Bay Area, from San Diego, from Seattle, from Boston, and the other places that at first glance kind of look similar? I don't have that answer for you, but this group, the folks that are on this call on this town hall, are just the kinds of folks who can, start to finish that sentence. If I want a future in technology X, I got to be in Hampton Roads. So I don't know, Stuart, do you have thoughts? I don't want to filibuster here and take all the time.
Yeah, I sure do, and it's a very timely question, Savannah. So for about the last 8 weeks or so, I've been part of this 757 recovery effort, co-chairing the science and technology portion of that with David Bowles, who's known to many people on this call as the former director of NASA Langley Research Center. And, the two of us were charged with putting together a group and really focusing on this question and focusing on a lot of the things that Chris just spoke to. What are the assets in the region? What's special about the region? What do we have in this region that, other regions, should be envious of, are envious of? And what are the, concrete actions? What are specific things that we can recommend? So this has been a big effort, the 757 recovery activity, to try and formulate, concrete strategies for the region in a broad range of areas, science and technology, innovation being one of them. And, although we didn't coordinate this at all, a number of the things that Chris just spoke about are recommendations that we made. So first off, the assets we have here are really spectacular if you just stand back and look at federal investment in the part of Department of Energy through Jefferson Lab, NASA investment at NASA Langley, military investment, across this entire region, the university system and the university research ecosystem around here, the port, the bay. There's a lot that this region has to offer, and one area where we identified we've struggled is what is that if the Bay Area is Silicon Valley and it's around semiconductors, what is that for our region? What is that thing going to be for our region? And like Chris said, it takes a bet. It may take a gamble. Some friends at NASA may argue that autonomous technology is the way to go for this region. So they're putting a lot of effort into that, and makes a lot of sense, right? With the sort of future that is likely to be ahead of us. Is it some other areas? We'd love to see a burgeoning growth in nuclear medicine technologies here adjacent to the laboratory, right? That's something that we could bring to bear. But being deliberate about identifying some of those opportunities and then really going for it in a very deliberate way. So Savannah, right down the hall from you is Jeff Johnson, who's the director of Tech Center. He was involved in this group as well. And he urged us to really come together in terms of all these assets. I just, went through the long laundry list in racking up, and be deliberate about one or two things. Pick a few of these potential areas and actually work them through the Commonwealth and the role the Commonwealth plays, through venture capital and the role that VC plays, and get good at turning that crank. It doesn't guarantee success, but we've got to get better at getting technologies out of labs, out of federal research institutions, universities I throw in, as well. Get better at that as a region. That's not going to be 100% success, but we got to exercise those processes and get good at them. So anyway, that's a little preview of, what you're likely to read in a report that's going to come out from this activity. The other thing, just finally, I'll say is infrastructure for technology is another area that we just think is huge. And, we need to get there early. We can't be one of the last communities to get there. So we're talking about a fiber ring on the south side, that couldn't be more important. It ought to also include the peninsula. We're talking about 5G technologies and Internet of Things and industries of the future that, grow up around those. So, we need to be out there up front in those sort of underpinning tech, infrastructure projects as a region.
I like the autonomy. That's a good one. But don't forget soft-shell crabs as a strength.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chris. The next question was submitted by Bo Garner. Bo is a partner at PB Maris, and the question he submitted was, can you elaborate on how research from J Labs has created new businesses and other economic impacts?
Oh boy, well thanks, Bo. Look, Dr. Henderson is going to be, more qualified than I am to answer the particulars. And I guess I'd want to build on the idea of businesses and economic impact with the kinds of stuff we were just discussing. What does it mean to have a national lab in your neighborhood? What does it mean for the development of a high-tech identity? What does it mean for kids to know that, in their hometown, we're unlocking the fundamental secrets of nature, right? That makes a difference. If there's ever a halo effect, having a national lab down the street's got to be one. But look, 700 or so highly trained and highly paid employees at JLab, right? Many of those folks are world-leading experts. I think JLab invites close to 2,000 users a year from across the U.S., the accelerator and the world to the accelerator complex. They visit, they sleep, they eat. If they're from other countries, maybe they shop. So that's just the money flowing through the lab in terms of payroll and visitors is already a big economic impact. And we were tiptoeing down the road to the idea that JLab also designs and manufactures these accelerator modules that are going into experiments at Fermilab in Illinois, to Stanford, and eventually to the EIC, this EIC at Brookhaven. You're exporting very complicated, very high-end, very expensive high-tech equipment. That's impact. And there's a supply chain that goes with that. I think Stuart mentioned, several 700 or so PhDs have completed their scientific work at JLab on the way to jobs at universities and companies around the world. He'll probably know the number of patents, probably a couple hundred patents, number of companies. That's pretty good for a single-purpose lab that's been focused on nuclear physics. We've got much more elaborate laboratories in the country. Can we do more? You bet, right? And we want to, and that's why we're here today with everyone. Could we use help with that? Yeah. It's one thing to generate new science and technology. We're pretty good at that. As Stuart said, someone's got to be there to catch it, right? We can help to some degree, but nurturing the technology, financing, promoting startups, and the growth of companies, hopefully companies local or regional to Tidewater, that's really not the mission of the Department of Energy as Congress has told us, as they've defined it and authorized it. That's subject to modification, but it takes, I think what we're getting at is it takes this technology ecosystem outside the lab, and that requires this intent and purposeful action by the regional players that Stuart was just talking about, private, university sector, government, regional government. So this commitment to a regional identity in technology that we're talking about. So, I don't know. Stuart, I don't know if you want to talk about particular success stories. That's probably a long list. I don't want to eat up too much time, but
yeah, just briefly, I can maybe run through a few of the highlights. So, you may be interested. We completed an economic impact study in 2018, and the numbers are really, really impressive. The study found about a $560 million benefit in economic output, with $250 million labor income and about 3,500 jobs as the total impact from the direct spending of about $180 million. So that's a pretty good factor. Not all of that, but the bulk of that was positive impact in the Commonwealth of Virginia and in the Hampton Roads region. So in the Commonwealth, the impact of that $180 million direct investment was about $310 million in economic output and about 2,200 jobs. And locally in Hampton Roads, it's about 2,000 jobs. So, Chris described the nearly 2,000 scientists, graduate students who come to the laboratory to make use of it for research. They come to the lab, some spend months, some bring their families. They keep this area going around here, and that really counts. That really matters. We have indirect impacts, harder to really put a price tag on. These about 100 PhD students every year who graduate. Of course, they go off to do all sorts of interesting things. There's an enormous impact from that, a little harder to quantify. Some of the direct things, I think many people are familiar with a couple of our real success stories. One in particular, some intellectual property that was, licensed from the lab more than, I think, 2 decades ago, turned into a product, manufactured, marketed, placed in hundreds of hospitals really throughout the world to image breast cancers and to catch breast cancers before they reach the stage of being detected in a mammogram. So, this is life-saving technology. We are always on the lookout for ways to, put this nuclear physics technology to use in medical imaging or nuclear medicine. We have a small but pretty, effective and exciting program in those areas. So, those are the sort of real success stories we look for and try very hard to get behind and make happen through the technologies that we develop here.
Thank you, Stuart. Our next question is from Lynn Clements. Lynn is the Executive Director at the Slover Library. Lynn, you can go ahead.
Hi, and I think in business world, they would call that competitive advantage, right, Chris? That's what we need to seek out, is what our competitive advantage is here in the 757. So I'm on the ODU College of Science board as a graduate of Old Dominion, and I know that they do some work with you, and I'm also on the board for Tidewater Community College. You can see I'm into higher ed. So what more can higher ed do to support scientific research in Hampton Roads and become an incubator for new discoveries and inventions?
Okay, well, thanks, Lynn. Yeah, we talked a little bit about this earlier with Savannah and Bo, right? This idea of developing a regional identity around technology, and certainly that's going to require higher education, working together to focus and develop the identity. At the end of the day, discoveries, inventions, technology companies, this is all about driven and talented people. You can dangle all the facilities and buildings you want. It's about people. Driven, talented people in technology go where there are great universities. They go where there are like-minded colleagues. They go where there's opportunity. It's changed a lot since I was a kid, but my team tells me there are something like 20 public and private colleges and universities, within a stone's throw of Newport News. That's represents a lot of potential, but the question is, are these institutions willing to do what it takes to build on what they have now and continue to attract first-rate, science and technology talent, including competitive salaries? And, when I say competitive, I mean salary offers that are going to beat other salary offers in a bidding war for the best talent. You got, this isn't a place where you go cheap if you really want to bring people together. Startup packages, obviously university facilities. I can tell you that DOE and JLab are willing to help get great people here, right? Aside, CBAF, the accelerator itself is a draw because it's unique in the world and you got to come there to use it. But we also have been building, I think JLab has 23 joint faculty positions with universities in the region. And this kind of, hey, I've got 1 foot in a university, 1 foot in a national laboratory, access to resources at both. Those kinds of arrangements can help attract and retain great faculty. And then JLab can work with universities and K through 12 to enrich the overall STEM environment, right? We've got annually all of our laboratories, including JLab, bring interns, undergraduate interns in to get hands-on experience. Actually, not this summer hands-on. It was all virtual, but we did it anyway. Even in COVID, we had a class of interns at all of our laboratories. Research experience for those folks. You mentioned ODU. JLab, I think, has a partnership with NSF and ODU, the research experience for undergraduates, REU program in nuclear physics. A great K through 12 STEM education program the congressman mentioned, and it's not just about it's about bringing more folks into the system, but in particular, we use these K through 12 STEM programs to focus to increase participation among women, underrepresented minorities in STEM. It's very effective in increasing the pipeline. And I also don't want to forget about the importance of technical education and other needs aside from just university STEM specialties. What do I mean by that? We talked about this ecosystem. A facility like JLab doesn't just employ scientists, right? And whether it's JLab or the universities in the area or facilities operated by startup companies, it takes engineers, it takes technicians to operate and maintain equipment, it takes finance and accounting folks and HR folks and business operations folks and marketing and communications folks. There's a whole range of support personnel that can't be generalists, right? These folks need to understand the business of technology. It's not like other businesses. It's not like shipping, right? It's not like commodity manufacturing. So I'm quite certain that across the institutions in Hampton Roads, you've got programs in HR, in accounting, in business, etc. But I guess what I'm asking is, while they're studying these things that may not be STEM, are they, if we're looking to develop an identity in technology and a regional ecosystem around technology, are they able to tailor those experiences to working in technology, right? HR expert in shipping and logistics does not have the same skill set as an HR expert in technology. I'm not saying one is better than the other. It's just a different skill set, a different awareness of the pool of talent. Same for communications, advertising, certainly for finance, and I'll just add, because we're talking about universities and being creative, another huge driver of technology at places like Berkeley, like Stanford, like MIT, and other technology hubs is a focus on giving young people access to education and experience and resources surrounding entrepreneurship and innovation. So some of these kids, by the time they've graduated, they may have competed in a business plan competition or a funding competition. They may have actually started a company. Some of them have started many companies, right? They may have graduated with a dual degree like an MBA in addition to a technical degree. So, is the constellation of universities and colleges and trade schools thinking about these sorts of ideas and opportunities in Hampton Roads? You can try to be all things to all people, or again, we talked about this idea of focus, about identifying a tech, a tech brand, if you will. Even at the educational institutional level, you can teach people science or let them go find their way, or you can nurture this idea of inventing things and building companies and train all these other kind of folks that are needed for this bigger technology ecosystem to work. You want to keep these folks, their ideas, and the companies they might build in the Hampton Roads area, and that's this regional identity that we're talking about. I think is important and a focus across all these areas. I don't know if that's helpful.
Thanks, Chris. Our next question is from Gordon Gentry, the Peninsula Chairman from Town Bank. Gordon, you can go ahead.
Thank you, and good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Fall, for hosting this town hall meeting in Wahoo Wah. You have already addressed, you and Stu, some of the ways that our community can support the aims of Jeff Lab, but I wonder if there's something in particular that you would emphasize that we as a Hampton Roads community can do to support not only the aims, but your advancement.
Well, hopefully, thank you, sir, for the question. And hopefully, we're also talking about how the lab can support the region, because it's a partnership. If we're talking about the region and we're talking about the community, I would say, when we've already addressed the academic sector, we've talked about some particular focused ideas, but there's one thing that is kind of important, and I would say that the best thing that you all can do is to embrace an attitude of partnership and to realize that and I'm being really honest here, you're in competition with other regions around the country. What do I mean by this? For this leadership at the team at the Department of Energy, again, being honest, it's not just about writing checks from the federal government. When we contemplate investments, we are looking for partnership and participation. We're looking for buy-in. We're looking for skin in the game. You can call it what you will. And it's not just about making our resources go further, right? There's a principle behind this. It's about building a framework that better assures success over the long term for the work that we're doing, the projects that we're doing in our laboratory, right? When the region contributes, the region is invested in the success of whatever it is that we're doing. So if we're going to invest in new facilities or buildings for our lab, we'd like to see the city, the region, the universities, the Commonwealth contribute to some of that, whether it's in kind, supporting infrastructure, or frankly, even cash for projects, right? Actual buy-in on a project in terms of financial resources. But again, getting back to this theme, it's more than just the nuts, literally the nuts and bolts of the lab itself that is, assures success. If we're going to be an anchor tenant, using that metaphor, and invest in our lab, we want the rest of the shopping mall, so to speak, to be vibrant and attractive and successful. A place where people want to come to work and where people want to stay to live. We've already seen, I've got some numbers from my team, some great examples of this kind of attitude from Newport News and the Commonwealth. As I understand it, Newport News has provided something like $100 million in support over the years. Stuart's better positioned to recite the particular projects and things that you all have provided. The ARC is the one I'm most familiar with because that's sort of evolved while I've been in office here. Thank you. And as I understand it, the Commonwealth has contributed since the beginning of the lab on the order of say $75 million, something like that. Now, that's okay, and that's a good start. We'll take what we can get, but sir, you could take an honest look at what's happening at our other labs around the country and ask whether Virginia, in particular, is competitive, right? Illinois, New York, Washington State, they've all embraced this idea and stepped up in recent years. In the few cases where it's a university that manages our lab for us, those institutions have made substantial contributions. I'm not going to throw numbers out there and embarrass folks, but take a look at the numbers, right? These places understand that, sure, these are federal labs, but they're also prime targets for economic development resources because of the jobs they bring and the differences they make in the spirit of the regions that we've been talking about, the opportunities they create to make better lives for their kids, a better future, and this leveraging of federal resources. So our labs are great investments, and as I don't want to beat this to death, but other regions understand this, and at least under, again, this DOE leadership team and myself as director, external buy-in is an explicit factor when we choose where to make investments. Not the only factor, but it's an important one. And so, we've spent a lot of time so far talking about this idea of technology ecosystem. You want to be a tech hub, it's got to be a place that attracts tech talent. So that's things that I'm sure you appreciate already: schools, infrastructure, quality of life. But also, we're looking to make our money go further. We're looking to get buy-in. We're looking for co-investment. So, anyway, Stuart, any thoughts there? Sorry to get me going. I'll talk all day.
No, I just say that, the partnerships that have been so important for the lab over the years. Chris spoke to the City of Newport News partnership, which for us is just, fantastic and absolutely essential. The partnership with the Commonwealth, has just made a huge difference for the lab. We have strong partnerships already with the university system in nuclear physics. So kind of tying a little to the previous question or 2 questions ago, the university system. You know, we have a lot of partnerships. Chris mentioned the 23 joint faculty. There are more than 200 graduate students who call Jefferson Lab their research home throughout the Commonwealth. And, you know, I can foreshadow a little bit in terms of the directions that we're looking at moving in the future, that we're looking to really grow those partnerships, you know, beyond where they are today. The university system here within the Commonwealth is, you know, so important, so powerful, and there's such talent there. And in particular, in some of the areas where we are eager to go, you know, in the end, we want to do that in partnership. So anyway, this is a big topic. It's a big topic for Virginia. It's a big topic for our region. But just, you know, hinting a little bit at maybe some conversations to come in the future.
Well, but, and, you know, again, not to beat it, but do the SWOT analysis, right? There's been meaningful, genuine partnership. I do encourage leaders in you know, at the Commonwealth level and at the regional level to look around at what other places are doing, because it is a very different picture from, I think, what was the case 20 years ago, and this sense that, you know, of ownership of a lab in a region, regional ownership, as opposed to this being a base or a federal facility that's kind of, it's really, you know, embracing it and helping to nurture it is kind of what we're looking for, and certainly, again, what other places, many other places are doing. So I don't know if that helps.
Thanks, Chris. Our next question was submitted by Justin Stevens. He is an assistant professor at the College of William and Mary. Justin, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Chris. So I'm one of those folks who was drawn to the area by the unique facilities in nuclear physics at JLab. So my question focuses on the long-term future of the lab and what the Office of Science has in mind for JLab. So I have 2 parts to the question. What's the vision for the long-term role of JLab in the electron-ion collider? And then second, how will decisions be made about some of these possible expansions of the scientific mission of the lab that we've been talking about some?
Super. Thanks, Justin. I like your artwork on the wall there.
Thanks.
My sister, by the way, went to William and Mary, so we're a Virginia family through and through here. Well, look, the first part's easy. Brookhaven and JLab are full partners for the construction and the research program for the EIC, kind of full stop, right? That includes where we spend the resources for building it. So a lot of that, I can't say it's a 50-50 split, because there's, you know, it doesn't quite work out that way, but a substantial amount of the resources are going to JLab. We talked about the construction of these cryo modules, for example. Both labs understand my expectations about this. It's built into the framework documents, and I'm thrilled to report that I think we're off to a fantastic start. Don't just take it from me. You know, you can talk to Stuart offline, online. Dean Gibbs, director of Brookhaven, or folks on the integrated team that's doing this EIC planning. I think it's Tim Hallman on the line. So that's going to work out well. I'm confident, and again, they're confident. Second part is less concrete, but yeah, let me throw out some ideas. First of all, in public and in private and in testimony and otherwise, I say the same thing. I'm not a big fan of single-purpose laboratories, right? That's the way a Jeff Lab was built, conceived of, built as a focus on nuclear physics and nothing else. That is an exception across our complex, right? More of our labs do many things. And so my goal and my plan, and by extension, as I'm director, our goal and our plan, I get to do that, is to diversify the mission of JLab. And so, what are some opportunities? Well, first of all, works best, as I talked about before, when what we want and what the region can do and JLab's interested in resonates. So looking for ideas from stakeholders like William and Mary, the other universities, always looking for ideas because, again, success is going to be more successful when you all are willing to buy in, provide resources, we resonate on a particular topic. This question about what is the tech identity going to be for Hampton Roads is a big one. But I do see two opportunities that I've talked about. First of all, generally across our complex, we need more high-performance computing and data analysis, and we need that. A lot of that is concentrated on the West Coast. I think we need that on the East Coast. I'll be explicit. It's a bit in the weeds, but we are in the process of, frankly, revolutionizing how we do data, how we link data and computation and these big experiments like the EIC, right? The EIC is going to produce massive amounts of data, and JLab could be an ideal place to prototype and cite that sort of computational capability, data analytics capability in sort of real time, which is what we're trying to do, kind of close this loop of experiment, analyze, predict, experiment, analyze, predict, going down a rabbit hole. I want to avoid that. But JLab and Brookhaven are partners on the EIC, so I could easily imagine, data generated at Brookhaven comes to the other nuclear physics expertise for analysis, storage, etc. Getting a little ahead of the skis because I can't make promise. I can't, this is something that Congress has to weigh in on. We're not talking about pocket change, and so it takes significant planning to make this kind of thing happen, and Congress has to provide for it. But there's another reason for computation at Jeff Lab. Most folks don't know it, but a key innovation for our current generation of supercomputers, the ones we have now, the exascale supercomputers that we're building, is this idea of using GPU graphics coprocessors that are particularly good at certain kinds of calculations, particularly good at AI processing, for example. It was Jeff Lab that innovated this for the Department of Energy. They were the first ones to do this at scale in the Department of Energy. So they have computation in their DNA, so to speak. So computation is one, and of course that can be relatively easily generalized across different topics. And another big opportunity that I'm excited about is systems engineering. Okay, we talked earlier, Joseph, others, about how these mega science projects are huge collaborations across multiple labs with components largely built by the labs themselves. What's something else that requires a lot of systems engineering and the assembly of parts from all over the country and very high precision and performance requirements? A nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, that's one example. So I look at engineering and design as core competencies of Hampton Roads, right? And so I could see for our 17 lab, Department of Energy complex, or the 10 labs that I oversee, a sort of systems engineering center of excellence. We talked about this chief engineer function. Systems engineering center for excellence at a DOE lab like JLab, right? What's another opportunity? Maybe a third. It's not so obvious right now because JLab has this literally intense focus on nuclear physics. But a lot of our labs do an awful lot of national security work, right? And so, even Jeff Lab has worked with DoD on free electron lasers in the past, so it's not a stretch. That's in their history. But as some of these other capabilities, engineering, computation, the technology behind nuclear physics grow at JLab or integrated, it could be a natural place for collaboration with DoD, also DHS, Homeland Security, your neighbors at NASA across the street there, other federal agencies. So look, suffice it to say, long story short, I'm really bullish about the growth and diversification of JLab. But, as I've said, but we're on our 6, 7 times now, a lot of this is about regional partnership, right? What can we do together rather than what is the federal government going to plop down, made out of whole cloth on Jeff Lab and just have it run? So I don't know, Stuart, what do you think? Do any of those ideas sound attractive to you? What do you got? What do you got for me? What do you want to do?
Yes, of course. And yeah, again, without getting too far out in front of our skis or your skis, we're thinking long and hard about these. I mean, I'll just emphasize one thing. This is this notion of diversifying the lab. It's something we're very excited about. It's obviously not something we can just wake up one morning and decide to do on our own. So it's very much in partnership with the Office of Science at DOE. And as Chris pointed out at the very beginning, that will require partnership with Congress and other stakeholders as well to really make it happen. There's one other thing that, again, is kind of a glimmer in the eye, and maybe, Chris can add a little to this, and that is the growing partnership between the department and the NIH, the National Institutes of Health. Yep. So, we have a real history in medical imaging through nuclear physics methods and, nuclear medicine, nuclear physics technologies finding their way into nuclear medicine. So that's a pretty interesting area. And, we actually were supposed to, in about, I think, 8 weeks, be hosting what would have been a very interesting workshop with NIH colleagues down here at the laboratory, interacting with the nuclear physics community in terms of just basic research. What's out there in terms of technologies that are of use and can really be brought to bear. So anyway, that's a little further afield perhaps, but something I think pretty interesting.
Well, thanks. I'll just foot stomp what Stuart said, and I guess I should have mentioned it also, and that is that a big strategic goal of the Office of Science overall is better integration with the National Institutes of Health and doing what we can to help their mission because we do some very special stuff, right? That they can't do alone.
Okay, so our last question was submitted by Jerry Guilfoyle. Jerry is a professor at the University of Richmond, and his question is, what will the Office of Science look like in 20 years?
So another softball question. Thank you, Jerry. All right. Okay. Well, the answer I have most confidence in out of the gate is that it's probably going to be very different than it is today. And I say this for a couple of reasons. So one is if you look back over the history of the Office of Science and its predecessors, because the Office of Science is actually not that old, this is kind of where I'm going, just about every 20 years there's been a major reorganization, upheaval, and the Office of Science was created in 1998, so we're 2 years overdue, right, just about. Congress is really big on science and technology right now. Not only are we blessed, frankly, with record budgets and a kind of renewed appreciation for the role of science in America, for international leadership, for better lives for our citizens and for people around the world, and not least for economic development. That's been a theme for today. But there are some really big, mind-blowing ideas coming out of Congress right now with vast budgets and an accompanying sort of reorganization of how we do science writ large in this country. So, I expect the Office of Science to look different. But, how we organize and plan and resource science, that's important. Maybe all of, the DC part of the Office of Science or science in general looks different in 20 years. But to me, what's really important, what's more important at the end of the day is, the business end of the lab, so to speak, business end of the department, so to speak, and that's our labs. And so, like JLab, right? And right now we have a really serious thought exercise going on right now that we call Laboratories of the Future. So thanks for the question, right? Because I'm really happy to talk about this, to explore just this sort of idea, right? We think that we understand what the Office of Science and particularly DOE labs do for the country. Yes, we do basic physical sciences like nuclear physics at JLab. But we also design, build, maintain these world unique user facilities for science and technology, right? They're used by our scientists, by university scientists, like yourself maybe, by private sector scientists. Companies use our labs. CBAF is one example at JLab, but we provide supercomputers, right? We are the executive agent for the entire country on advanced supercomputers, synchrotrons, and free electron lasers for X-rays, neutron sources, nanoscience facilities, biotechnology facilities. We just, a week or two ago, announced 5 new quantum science centers. Now, those aren't exactly user facilities, but they're this new public-private partnership collaboration model, very special, very important. Thanks again to Congress for that. And almost uniquely in the federal government, at the federal level, maybe at the country level, we do science at scale, what we call science at scale. So this is not just about these massive facilities that don't exist anyplace else and that no company or no university is going to be able to afford or to buy or be interested in buying, but it's also about the effective and efficient collaboration of sometimes thousands, right, of scientists around the world to achieve a particular science objective. Think, CERN, the collider at CERN. Think Rick here in this country up at Brookhaven. Think about CBAF. So that's a special skill. You don't just do that. You don't just figure out how to do that overnight. There are plenty of areas of science that don't know how to do science at scale. Our labs are uniquely places of convergence, right, where computational sciences, physical sciences, mathematics, sometimes biological sciences can come together to tackle a problem that none of the individual disciplines could tackle. This doesn't tend to work as well at places like universities because they're organized around traditional departments, and I think the collaboration oftentimes is the exception rather than the rule. And I mentioned this before, because of our history, we're also adept at dual or multi-use technology. So working on science and technology that might be great for civilian applications, but might have national security applications that we need to be quiet about as well. So, if we say to ourselves, those are the things we want to ensure we can do for the country, and, I'm sure I'm leaving out some stuff. We could quibble over that. What is that feature? What is the set of features? We could ask the question, what kind of physical infrastructure, what kind of organizational structure do we need in order to accomplish these missions? It might look like it does now, but I'm betting that if we were to start fresh with a blank sheet of paper and say, these are the things we want to do, science at scale, convergence, user facilities, what's the best way to accomplish them? We might come up with a different answer. So, particularly if, as we are realizing now and as we're focused on now, we want to better enable this science infrastructure to support economic development, to be part of a regional community, part of the region's identity. So I think it's a natural expectation that our labs may look very different in 20 years, right? We see hints of devolcanization in the way we're doing this major infrastructure. We talked about collaboration for projects. We can look at the challenge that we started out talking about COVID today, right? We don't have a national biotechnology laboratory in our system in this country. So in response to COVID, we created a virtual one, right? The National Virtual Biotechnology Laboratory took computational, analytical, biotechnology resources from across all our DOE labs, brought them under one management and funding structure to fight COVID. It turns out that worked pretty well, and it might be a prototype for how we do business in certain areas of science in the future. So All sorts of areas we could, related to our labs, we could ask, why is it the way we're doing it? And is this the best way? Hiring and sourcing of talent, contracting and business practices, all sorts of things. Look, we're incredibly proud of our history going all the way back to the Manhattan Project and the Cold War, but success in technology in this country since the Cold War, whether in Silicon Valley, the web companies there, biotechnology, the Amazons of the world, Google's also in Silicon Valley, that's as much about innovation in organization and business practices as it is about the technology itself. So anyway, we're excited about the lab, gone on at length here. The Laboratory of the Future initiative is something we're really interested in. We're soliciting ideas from all sorts of places, including the labs, and we'll be doing regional visits about that. So yeah, the DOE Office of Science, or whatever it's called, next, is likely to look different, but I also think that we're going to see an evolution in the structure and function of our, the business end of what we do, which is our laboratories. Again, filibustering. Stuart, what do you think? Sorry, I'm excited about this.
Yeah, I can just weigh in a little bit on the labs of the future, which is a really exciting, topic to discuss. And just imagine, what 20 years from now, what should a national lab look like? What should it be doing? So it's, we're Jefferson Lab. All the labs are engaging with the Office of Science on that question. It's an exciting topic, and like Chris said, every couple of decades, labs one by one, or the entire system sort of reinvents itself, aligns against the new missions of the time. So, we intend to be a part of that.
Great. Well, the Q&A is over, and so is the program. So, Chris and Stuart, if you have any final remarks.
No, thank you guys thanks for hosting. This is fun. Again, hopefully we get to do this in person and actually come visit. Like to do it again. Start of the conversation. Love to get some feedback about whether this works for folks, because I know it's a little awkward. It's really hard to do sort of live Q&A over these things, and but valuable for me. I hope for you all. And what a jewel you have there. Not just in Stuart, I'll call you a jewel, Stuart, but in the lab, and the folks, the incredible folks that are part of that, and real opportunity, really. So looking forward to figuring out how to help realize this future that we're talking about.
Yeah, let me just add my thanks. I really appreciate, Chris, your engagement on this. I think this was great. Let's do it again. Just let me know the next time you want to do it. This was a lot of fun and a lot of great questions. Also look forward to being able to do this in person. Hopefully that day comes before too long. Thanks very much to all of you. Thanks very much, Congressman Scott, for your time and joining us, and to everyone who's been online. If you have further questions or feedback, we would love to hear that. So please reach out. You know how to reach the lab, and you know how to reach me and others at the lab. So you can find a way off of our webpage if you want to send an email, if you don't have my email, for example. So with that, thanks very much. And thanks to the Department of Energy, Scott, for you reaching out and really spearheading this and organizing it. Thanks so much.
Right. Stay safe, everyone.